Welcome to the Intentional Churches podcast. Our heart is to help you clarify vision, improve decision-making, and stimulate growth in your church, no matter the size, denomination, or context. We're passionate about seeing disciplined conversations and disciplined decisions create a sustainable, lasting impact in the community where you serve. I'm your host, Jesse Anderson, and I'm joined by Intentional Churches co-founders Doug Parks and Bart Rendell. Their book, Intentional Churches, How Implementing an Operating System Clarifies Vision, Improves Decision-Making, and Stimulates Growth, is available now anywhere you buy your books. And the purpose of this podcast is to summarize the key thoughts and ideas of this biblically based system. So far in this podcast series, we've shared our philosophy around embracing an operating system to accomplish your vision, as opposed to a series of silver bullet strategies or ideas. We've unpacked what our operating system, what we call Church OS, is all about. And last episode, we covered the core framework to Church OS, the Great Commission engine. So if you're just jumping in, somebody shared this episode with you, and you haven't heard those yet, go back and listen to them to get the full perspective. Today, we're going to be talking about a fun topic, and that is evaluation. So let's dive in. Doug and Bart, in the last episode, we unpacked this foundational piece of Church OS, the Great Commission engine. It's built on Matthew 28, Acts 2, Luke 15, and it's the very basic building blocks of a healthy church. And in order to continue to see fruit in our church and to be effective, we have to evaluate how well we're doing, specifically with the components of the Great Commission engine. But oftentimes we don't realize just how subjective our evaluation can be. So, Doug, why is it so important that we evaluate? And what are the common pitfalls that you see a church fall into when evaluating its effectiveness?
Yeah, this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, man. So it's very difficult because anytime we go to evaluate in church, there's a lot of emotion tied up in calling and why you're even working in ministry. And so evaluation can quickly become a judgment or a critique on how well I'm doing and it becomes an emotional exercise instead of what it was intended for. Evaluation, the purpose of evaluation ultimately is to make us better at accomplishing the Great Commission. That's simply it. And so the reason why we count, we rate, always should infer action. If you listen closely to why you evaluate something the way you do, whether it's good, not as good, or not good at all, embedded in the reason why you say what you said is a bounty of action and next steps and information to inform what your next season's work should be.
Yeah, really, it should inform our strategy and the next steps, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So we got to get away from making an emotional exercise. So
that's good.
Here's the way we've learned over the years, and I'm guilty of every one of these. So this is usually senior pastors chuckle quite a bit when we're doing this. So the first one, obviously, is personal preferences. Like we hear this all the time in meetings. I really like that sermon or this thing, or I didn't like that, or my wife, or the personal preferences of the people around you, your group, or your wife, your spouse. Okay, so personal preferences. I affectionately call this the naughty list. Like these are the ways we should stop evaluating by if we're going to get to a real strategic conversation. So personal preference, number one. The next one, these are a little bit more about comparing to ourselves, so to past history. Like, do you remember the good old days when our church was in this? We're so much better at this thing in this season.
At least we're not where we used to be.
Yeah, at least we're not where we used to be. That's right.
Yeah.
A lot of times we'll compare to other churches.
Yes.
And we'll say, sorry, worship pastors in advance, but I had a worship pastor for years. He would say, such and such's church's worship budget is twice the size of ours. He was using it as a comparison to other churches. Then our past successes, that's another way we should not be evaluating in strategic conversations. And there's the next one is probably the most dangerous evaluation method done the most by church leaders that endangers strategic conversation for taking hold to get us to be better, and that is the anecdotal story. And we in the pastorate have a way of talking about such and such family who came to know Jesus in the basket weaving ministry. And so therefore we must never get rid of the basket weaving ministry. Or I know a family who left the church because X, Y, or Z, therefore we need to stop that program. And if you get behind it, and I've done this, so I'm guilty as anyone out there of this, it is a tool we are using to try to convince, and if we're not careful, it can slip into passive aggressiveness where we're using anecdotal stories to try to get an agenda item move forward instead of using some real objectified thought around it. So
it's interesting, isn't it? In ministry, we can come up with a story to defend any position.
Oh, absolutely.
And we, or maybe a testimony would be a better word, or if that makes more sense to you, like take a testimony, and like you said, because that ministry at one point, whether it was last week, last month, last year, one time, you know, I heard this, it then gives it credibility and legitimacy, and we need to keep going with it.
Yeah, that's it.
I want to say one thing. Pastors are pastoral, this on this topic, and any story hurts a little bit. In other words, they're people, and we're taught at the unit of one we minister, right? Even though you may be leading an organization of multiple or big, lots of people, just one story can really hurt. So what we're trying to do is to not say that's not important, but is it evidence of something more objective that's going on? That's kind of the real question, right?
Yeah, and two things. I want to be crystal clear. These are evaluation methods we do not want to use in a strategic meeting.
That's right.
I believe inspirational stories about life change should be in your staff meetings or your team meetings.
Right.
So we're not saying
Great
not
clarification.
Always. And then one last thing, we've worked across, I want to say 18 or 19 denomination. We may even be at 20 by now. And my charismatic friends have given me another one from the charismatic background, and that is the God card. It's the bonus one. God told me it is the end of strategic conversation. When you use that, God told me we should do X, Y, or Z. It's over. Game over.
The ultimate trump card.
That's right.
Yes.
Let me ask you this, Doug, because a couple of these kind of dovetail together. So we talked about personal preference, anecdotal evidence. We get that. But then the other three, past success, getting better, and comparison. I just want to make sure that people are hearing kind of the difference between those. So comparison being to other churches, maybe, or other ministries, maybe within ours. Getting better would be, well, guys, at least we're not as bad as we were last year, right?
Well, we don't suck as much as we did last year.
Yeah.
Our worship music doesn't suck as bad as it did. Therefore, we're good.
It might have gone from a 3 to a 4.
But it's still a 4.
It's still a 4, right?
Right.
And then past success. I felt like we drifted past that, and I just want to make sure that people hear what does that sound like when we evaluate by past success. Is that basically going, we had a great event at one time, so we can't be that far off?
That's exactly right.
Okay,
that's exactly right. We go back into the history again. These are a couple of historic looks. And
Let's go to the trophy case,
and we'll justify. Again, you're justifying a position, whether it's positive or negative, to try to get an agenda item advanced.
That's great. That's like the 50-year-old guy going to his trophy case. That's probably the best way to say it.
That's a good way to say it.
One time I had a great body, and I really did well.
Easy.
Easy. What are you saying, Jesse? So what I was going to say on, I say sometimes in teams, every church has had a heyday and every church has had a low point, right? So you can just kind of want to rest on the laurels of the heyday. And truthfully, we think you can be more objective, especially if you're driving toward double kingdom impact, on behalf of the one and reaching the lost and impacting your community. It's almost like you can't be too objective sometimes. So we'll get into that, I'm sure.
That's good. Okay, so Bart, besides the obvious answer, why is it so important that we have an accurate, objective view of where we stand?
Well, there's lots of reasons. One, it's very unifying as a team. I mean, if we can get to objective standards, man, it is satisfying when we're all on the same page, viewing something through the same lens. Even though we might disagree, just that fact of having the framework to agree or disagree upon the rudder. But then at the end of the day, I think the enemy uses things left unsaid or poor evaluation to undermine a great team, to cause fracture on the team, especially if things are left unsaid. So we talk about the last 10% of truth, which we didn't invent that phrase or that concept, but we love it embedded into Church OS, is that truth, you need to find it. and you need to find it as a team. And if you don't find it, and what I mean by that is the truth of the evaluation or at the maybe even detail level, that disconnect between team members, you can imagine elder board or staff team, that disconnect or lack of insight, quote unquote, truth of what is the real situation can become a lot of things. It can become an undercurrent that completely undermines, eroding underneath the trust between one another. The enemy can use those little nuggets of unfound truth to begin to create a resentment in the heart of people. And ultimately, he will use that lack of true, deep, honest, aligned truth. Again, we can have different opinions, but what is the truth about what it should be? He can use that disconnect to fracture and, again, destroy a team and destroy the good work of any church. I've just seen it happen again and again.
Yeah.
So find the truth, because the truth is hunting you down all the time.
Yeah, and you guys say in the book, and I love it, find a truth before it finds you.
That's right.
And a dear friend of ours likes to say, truth is relentless. Like truth doesn't knock at the door and leave when you don't answer. Truth just stays there and goes, it's going to come out at some point, whether it is in a lack of unity, whether there's a lack of effectiveness, whatever it is. Truth is always going to be there. So we've got to find it because it does exist. Okay, so Doug, talk about how is Church OS different? What is kind of the alternative evaluation standard, and how does Church OS keep churches from falling into the ditch of these 5 ways not to evaluate, naughty list? How does it keep us moving towards our vision and seeing fruit in our church? What does that look like?
Yeah, so in Church OS, we teach this principle of our evaluate. So we give you the naughty list, and every team is like waiting for me to say, well, then how should we evaluate? Because every time we evaluate, we use those 5 or 6 things.
That's right.
And so we use this concept called true north. And so Church OS leads a team along a journey to objectify more our true north, where we're heading as a team. And then we back into our strategic conversations and evaluate per that true north. So an example I give is if we were going to evaluate today, how am I doing in terms of running a 5K? If the true north were a 5K or the destination were a 5K, I probably could leg it out. I got some foot injuries, How am I doing today if I change the true north to a marathon? How am I doing today in relationship to running the true north becomes a marathon? Oh man, there's no way. I couldn't even walk and run it. It's not happening. And that's what we do with the church. We establish, okay, here's a marathon, double impact, double vision, reaching R1, defined with some vision around individual, where the church is going to be. And now let's use that to decide and talk about and inform our evaluation so we can get to that action I talked about earlier.
That's really good. So there's some sort of aligned center, a point of objectivity, if you will, with which to evaluate from, as opposed to the senior pastor, consensus, whatever it might be. There's got to be something that all of us are connected to. And practically, this looks like in Church OS, a flash grading system. You just want to talk, either Doug or Bart, talk a little bit about the red, yellow, green system and how important it is. And specifically, we could talk about it with the Great Commission engine that we did. We talked about in the last episode. So important to, instead of just going, yeah, we get those, we do all of those. How do we actually stay up on where is it today, and what would it take to move it from a red to a yellow or a yellow to a green?
Yeah. So these grading moments are like super important. And I'm going to describe a really simple one, red, yellow, green. So imagine we had the Great Commission engine conversation and we had it on the wall. And we'd come to understand what Piston 1 was, the catalytic weekend experience, the total experience for the purpose of the preaching of the word and worship, drawing people to Jesus, getting them to catalytically, through the Holy Spirit's help, maybe be spurred to take a next step. So we want to evaluate our strategy in that arena, which usually is a weekend experience of some type. Currently, it might be digital in some way. So red, yellow, green, and everybody's got to give a grade. And so one of our disciplines is you can't pick orange. You need to pick red, yellow, or green.
And they all try.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is another flaw in common evaluation is to hedge, and not be confident it is in this category. So green would be in relation to true north, where we want to go as a church, double kingdom impact, making more and better disciples. Green would be, it is in position to power that function toward that true north today. Yellow would be, it is delivering energy, in the case of the Great Commission engine, horsepower, to the ends of that true north, but not as good as it should be to drive us toward double kingdom impact or more and better disciples. It's got room for improvement. Red would be, no, I just have to say it's got so much room that it's probably not at all delivering the horsepower it should. And one of our principles is when things are red, typically when they're as important as the things on the Great Commission engine, they need attention. Now the problem is, and part of the OS by the end is, we usually have multiple reds when we're stretching ourselves continually to double kingdom impact. So one of the key questions in the end of the day is what your evaluation is, yes, but then which one are we going to prioritize, and what sequence are we going to do things? So yeah, red, yellow, green, man, it's pretty simple, but I think people have probably seen it out there, but the way we set it up it ultimately becomes very unifying for a team.
I do just want to make sure that people don't miss this part of it, which is the colors, the rating, like that may not be a new thing. But I don't want to move past too quickly what you talked about, which is, for instance, the catalytic weekend experience. It doesn't just mean that we have a quality experience. It doesn't mean that our worship's great, that our preaching's great. It's not kind of a subjective thing of what is the quality of that. I think that's where we can maybe go. Green, well, man, we've got a great weekend service. That's not what we're rating against because of the true north. We're rating how well is it moving us towards double vision impact. And I don't know if there's anything either of you want to unpack on that, but I just think that's so important that is that true north. That's the stake in the ground where we're going, I don't care that we love the service and we've gotten better and that people love it and people come and visit from all over the country to see how we do the service. Great. How is it moving us towards where we're going?
Well, even as you described it, we feel great about our worship service.
Yeah.
We think it's great quality. It's done with excellence. All those are to a preference. Like that is still using from the naughty list.
True.
Even though, and so the analogy, if you can imagine, in a worship experience, crossing it over to what I said about true north to running a marathon for me personally, it informs action. So what would I need to do now today, because I'm a red, to get to green? Well, I need to go to a podiatrist and have my ankles looked at. I need to change my diet. It informs action today. Yeah. Same is true of my right now digital worship experience, which for almost every church in America is red to whatever true north they're going to right now, because we tried to copy what we did physically digitally instead of adapting to the digital environment. In that, if we were having this evaluation to a true north right now, we would be innovating in all kinds of ways, and many churches are, about what that worship service looks like digitally. And we're already seeing some of those outcomes come, like shorter services and worship in the end, and there are innovations coming around it. But again, true north helps us get there quicker.
So good.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I was talking to a leader the other day to this point, understanding the principles of the Great Commission engine, just that one tool with the team. Innovate, using it to drive team-based discussion to then lead to innovations he's experimenting with to get at the principles of Piston 1 in particular, because it wasn't catalytically inspiring people to next steps. They weren't prepared to take them. It was a bad experience online. People aren't singing in their homes, and so just showing people singing on stage is not actually leading people to the throne, right? It's not catalytically moving people through the experience to a next step of life change.
That's
or of
such a key term, isn't
or
it? Even the word catalytic as opposed to quality or whatever, that it's got to move people.
Spark.
Wow.
That's right. So he's playing with all kinds of interesting ideas around more moving kind of artistic things online, or like you said, shorter sermons. He's going to try a PTI style weekend.
Love it.
Present the message. Here are the topics we're covering.
I happen to know what PTI is, but for those who aren't sports fans, please give it 30 seconds.
Pardon the interruption, man. On the ESPN.
ESPN show. That is great.
It's like 30 seconds per topic. You see like a laundry list of
There's
topics.
A countdown.
You can see it what they've covered and where they're going.
So tie that back to what you were saying. He's trying to PTI. What does that look like for the worship service? I'm not trying to.
It would be the preaching. It would be the preaching portion, teaching portion. So he and another one of his teachers are actually going to sit at a desk, not too dissimilar from this, have on the screen where they're headed, and they're going to unpack the gospel PTI style.
Wow.
And they're going to throw in a funny topic in there as they go along as well.
I guarantee you that church was evaluating, and they were trying to figure out where
it's to the ends of what we've been describing.
True
right?
north. Yeah.
That's really good.
To get there.
That's really good. And then with this, we'll talk about this in a future episode, the engagement pathway, but this is where we start to measure things and go, okay, how is this moving people? Not just that we're getting people who say, hey, I really liked this thing. What a cool format. It's not that, but it is, how is that engaging people and how is that helping them take a next step? Just to borrow from this, right?
Yeah.
So we're using evaluation. We're using, to your point, Doug, it's helping us strategize and then gauge some next steps, and we're really measuring there. That's awesome.
And the one aware filter on top of all of it, right?
That's
Constantly.
good.
We can't forget that.
That's good.
Right.
Very helpful
That's really
to
good.
objectify it as well.
That's really good. I feel like we could probably talk about this for another hour. We're gonna keep it there, keep it tight. This is a potent episode, but this is a pain point, and hopefully people are thinking differently about their evaluation standards, and it just gets them thinking differently. It is amazing how common these are to all of us, and every one of us has done either everyone or been around everyone or whatever it is. It's difficult. So super, super helpful. In the next episode, we're going to discuss the importance of allocating resources effectively to the places that can move your vision forward the most. And we're going to borrow some from a great word picture in the book or analogy, how to spot squatters, cul-de-sacs, and a buffet ministry mentality
Yes.
in the ministries at your church. So that's going to be a fun episode. As always, for free practical resources to help you where you're at today or to learn more about what we offer and how we can partner with your church, you can visit intentionalchurches.com. You can also follow us on your favorite social media platform or find us on YouTube to stay connected. And we're honored and humbled to serve you in any way we can to see greater impact in your church. Thanks for joining us today.